being intentional, prioritizing sleep is just as important as having a good exercise plan or having a good diet too.
Does your mail say doctor on it?
Yes.
Okay, that's all that matters. So.
Oh God, cool. I hate it though. I'm just Sam, please.
Okay, yeah. So Sam, yes. Sleep, diet, exercise, the big three. I'm just gonna try to speak on behalf of some of my peers, but I think that the sleep and the diet aspect are something that we outrun a lot in our 20s, and we can kind of get away with it, like the hormones and being younger. How important are those things though as we get older, or just in general?
I think even for people that are young, prioritizing sleep is just as important, right? Because they go hand in hand. Obviously, if you're not sleeping well, you can't perform in the exercise as well as you can because you're tired. So you're not really reaching your peak performance, which when you are young, you can kind of like offset a little bit. But I think from a metabolic standpoint, a lot of people don't really understand how important sleep is for both regulating your metabolism, kind of like getting rid of toxins and everything, and just like resetting your cycle for the next day. So a lot of the research that's out there now shows that if you're sleep deprived, you actually can mess with the hormones and the way your body produces them. So there's two big hormones. We're talking about appetite, right? So that's going to be leptin and ghrelin. Kind of complicated, right? But you can think of leptin tells you, hey, you're full, stop eating. And then ghrelin makes you hungry. So if you're trying to lose weight or maintain weight, right, you don't want to be eating too much, so you don't want your leptin out of whack, and you want to be able to say, hey, like, I'm hungry at the appropriate times. So if you're sleep deprived, our hormone leptin actually increases, making you hungry more during the day. And then you have a worse chance at saying, hey, you're full because your ghrelin is decreasing. So there's a lot of difficult like nuance with it, but basically what they were saying is that your body can't tell when you're supposed to be hungry and when you're full if you're sleep deprived, which then causes you to eat more, unfortunately, during the day.
It sounds almost though like the body's sort of trying to adapt, because if it's saying, hey, I'm being kept awake longer, I need fuel, sort of? Would that be one way?
Yeah, and then you also activate different systems in your brain that make you want to eat food that is not good for you because it's higher in sugar to get more of that energy out of the system. So, yeah, there's a lot.
So it's definitely a very delicate balance between the three. And so it sounds like it's sort of indicative of someone's lifestyle and sleep habits, which of course, external factors like work and all that stuff.
Yeah, people tend to put sleep on the back burner and like say, I'll just like hit it extra hard in the gym. But it actually doesn't work that way because there's other circumstances other than exercise that kind of play in your role of like being able to lose weight when it comes to just like your metabolism working at its best, but then also the hormones that go into it too.
Okay. Yeah, a lot of work actually gets done in our sleep, right?
Yes.
So can you elaborate a little bit about that?
So actually during sleep, your brain obviously, like I said, like removes toxins, but it also helps you think more clearly in the morning through your day. It actually helps you process and store memories. So there's a lot of things that go on in your sleep that you wouldn't think happen. And you need sleep in order for, you know, to have your best physical performance, cognitive, executive functioning, all that stuff. They've actually started to link Alzheimer's disease, which is a form of dementia, to lifestyle and sleep deprivation. So if you're chronically sleep deprived, your chances of developing dementia actually increase significantly. It's that important to longevity, to like your overall brain health and your physical health too.
Gotcha, right. So
I know it's a scary fact.
No, it is. And there are things that we know they're right. We rarely, you know, whether it's not getting a chance to execute or just not having the will, but, and a lot of subjective interpretations on sleep too, right? Some people are like, oh, you need 8 hours, but there's that 3% that can get off by 4 hours or 3 hours, right? So what is, if anything, the magic number for sleep?
So I would say that there's not a magic number. We like to use a range, right? So 7 to 9 is typically the range that we like to use for people, but then also know that as we age, that's going to change, right? Because you think of like a newborn, the number of hours they need is like 15 to 18 hours of sleep. So, and as we get older, teenagers too, they need about 10 to 12 hours. And then young adults, maybe like 6 to 7. And then as you age, that number increases a little bit. And then geriatric populations actually need even less sleep. they spend less time sleeping and less time in REM sleep too. So it's definitely something that is not a good for everyone, right? So it depends on your lifestyle, it depends on your age. And the best way to figure out like what's the best sleep number for you is just to keep track of your sleep. Do a daily log, use some type of wearable device, and just see where you're averaging, and then kind of try to stick to that number.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think a lot of us have those, and so when we're looking at our data, whether it's like iPhones or Androids or Samsung Health sleeping study data that we get, I know I dive into it and I'm like, I don't even know what I'm looking at. It says REM, deep, light, awake. What does all this mean? And I think some days, because we'll get into sleep debt later, but I'll sleep maybe 9 hours, 9.5, close to 10. I'm like, oh, I feel great. And then my sleep score is like, I don't know, 67. And I look at the REM cycles and it says I had 1 REM cycle.
Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah, what does that mean? Like if people were to look at their data, what's ideal in REM cycles and ideal in deep sleep?
Yeah, so there's 4 like true stages of sleep. And we cycle through those multiple times per night. So you have your non-REM sleep, which is non-rapid eye movement. And then you have your actual REM sleep, which is rapid eye movement. So the first 3 stages of sleep is your light sleep, your moderate sleep, and then moving into that deep sleep. And that's when your body starts shutting down. Everything starts to slow down a little bit. And then in that stage 3 of non-REM sleep is like where you're kind of like, I would say like dead to the world, a little paralyzed, all that stuff. And your brain activity slows down significantly. And then once you hit REM sleep, it's actually the opposite. Like your whole body spikes, your hormones spike, your brain activity spikes. That's where the movement in the eyes come in. And at first, in the beginning of the night, the transition to getting to REM sleep takes a while. But as we move through the night, it actually goes more quickly. So you spend more time in non-REM in the beginning of the night. And then by the end of the night, you're spending majority of the time in REM sleep, which is what's supposed to happen.
Okay.
So you have those 4 stages and you're supposed to cycle through those 4 stages about 4 to 5 times a night. And you need that stage 3 and that REM sleep in order to store memories, feel like you're not, feel refreshed and everything. Stage 3 and REM sleep do that for you. So if you are missing through those cycles or you are not spending the appropriate amount of time in those cycles, that's where you could be in bed for hours but not feel refreshed in the morning. A lot of people I know struggle with that, especially in this population. Okay,
yeah, so that tossing and turning, restlessness, and potentially affected by like outside influences,
alcohol.
Right? Okay, yeah, alcohol, right? Maybe some nervousness, anxiety about an upcoming school or promotion board.
So the anxiety with all that usually typically bothers are like light stage sleep, so stage 1, stage 2, because those people tend to have a problem with falling asleep, but then can stay asleep because their brain finally gets a chance to shut down. When we start talking about like substances like alcohol, though alcohol is a depressant and it makes you feel sleepy, it actually fragments your deep sleep and it really, really impacts your REM sleep. And unfortunately, having even just a single serving of alcohol can impact your REM sleep for up to 4 nights after having that. So, alcohol has a big impact on the REM sleep that you need for all the things we're talking about, like regulating your metabolism, feeling refreshed in the morning. So. Okay,
yeah, so that evening beer with your dinner probably isn't very beneficial.
No.
Okay.
Unfortunately, they did a lot of studies actually with alcohol and everything, and people who are sleep deprived have the cognitive capacity of somebody who has a blood alcohol level at like the legal limits of 0.08.
Wow.
So if you're tired, just from simply being tired, your motor performance is as if you were drunk, basically. That's how impactful it is. And speaking of hormones, I know this goes for the male population, but also females, because testosterone plays a role in our metabolic processes also. But just 5 nights of being sleep deprived, so having less than 5 hours of sleep, actually decreases your testosterone levels between 10 to 15%. So it impacts it a lot.
Let's talk about a sleep debt. A lot of us just try to catch up on the weekends. What can you tell us about that?
So unfortunately, research has shown, and there's a great podcast by Matt Walker about it's called How Do We Sleep and Why Do We Sleep? That shows that you can't actually have that recovery sleep. It just doesn't work that way. You can't actually have a debt throughout the week and then think you can sleep and recover on the weekend because your you're still having all those things going on during the week, and the weekend is just not enough time to make up all that sleep. So unfortunately, it just doesn't work. What does work, what the research has shown, is something called sleep banking. So knowing that if you're going out to the field or something like that where you're going to have a period of sleep restriction, increasing your amount of sleep before going through that actually improves like cognitive performance and all that. So I know it's a little counterintuitive thinking that like, oh, you'll just catch up on the tail end. But unfortunately, our brains are just not wired that way, and it doesn't actually work.
Okay, that makes sense. You can't pay it back, but you can save up for it.
Yes, exactly. Okay. That's a good tagline.
So like also going back a little bit to alcohol, as an outsider, I read about it. It's essentially a poison, right? So your body has to spend that extra time sleeping, processing that poison. And so also we'll get to the diet aspect of that with the other interviews, but it ends up potentially hindering your metabolism when you're sleeping, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Wow.
Because it's fragmenting that REM sleep that you need.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it really just kind of boils down to a lifestyle, the daily sleep habit. So
yeah.
What are some things that we can do to improve our sleep?
So
one thing a really big one is like no screen time or doom scrolling, right?
Right. Yeah. So I would say the best thing that you can do for your sleep is to come talk to us. Like, you guys have resources here, and you can reach out to both me, Renee, and even Nija. She's over there, so I'm looking up about that. But I would say being intentional with your decisions throughout the day. Timing is really important. So a lot of people think they have to stop doing things, and that's not necessarily true. Like, you don't have to give up caffeine. You don't have to like give up the tablet or anything like that, or your phone. You just got to time it correctly, right? Unfortunately, we live in a world that is very different from how humans evolved, right? So while we were evolving, that's what mediates all the processes to keep us awake and keep us asleep. But our world looks completely different like that than it did back then. So just knowing the timing of that, because we're simple creatures at the core. What controls our sleepiness and our arousal is just light. It's truly just light. But think of when we're truly in a moment of darkness. It's really never, unless we're about to like crash in bed.
As soon as they start dimming those lights for the tarp training or any kind of stuff that we have to do, like we all start getting sleepy.
So there's like these things in our brain that's super complicated. It's called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, and that is what triggers our arousal and our sleepiness, and it's 100% controlled by light exposure or darkness. So I would say that the best way to get better sleep is to, one, make good decisions about it, right? If you don't know about your caffeine consumption and timing it, you can come talk to us. Usually around noon to 1300 is when I would say to cut off the energy drinks or the caffeine. I know, I know, but we know that caffeine has a really long half-life. So if you're drinking coffee around like 4 p.m. or, everyone has that crash around like 1500, that caffeine is still in your brain, keeping you awake about midnight. It takes about 10 to 12 hours for it to completely get out of your system. So making good decisions with that. And then, like you said, not being on the phone right before bed, because that light exposure is triggering our brain. We need to be awake. And then using the bedroom for what it's for, right? Like,
no TVs in the bedroom.
No, yeah, I know it's really difficult for those folks in the barracks because they have limited space, right? So being creative and being intentional with those decisions and what you're doing, like when you're physically in the bed, but we don't want to condition the brain to think that the bed or bedroom is for anything other than the 2 S's, which is sleep and sex. So if you're doing things outside of that, then you're telling your brain that, hey, this time in bed is meant for other things other than sleeping, like worrying, being on the phone. And like I said before, though we like to think we're complex, we're super simple creatures. So just like putting a stimulus with a certain activity can condition our brain to say, we're not supposed to sleep here, we're supposed to be on our phone, or we're supposed to be stressing about life.
Gotcha.
So.
Yeah, no, I've had great success with that. I actually did that when I was younger. And as soon as I got the TV out of the room, I was like, wow, this is nice. Like, no distractions.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the smart devices too, I know kind of backpedaling here, but like they have like an alarm function where they'll wake you at the most optimal time of your sleep stage when you're in light sleep or something.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so how detrimental is it if you're like consistently waking up to some blaring alarm clock in the middle of your deep sleep or REM?
Yeah. So you've ever seen those memes or had this experience when you kind of just like doze off on the couch and naps are supposed to be super restful, but then like somebody wakes you up and it feels like a Mack truck's hit you and you feel worse than you did before taking the nap. That's because you woke up in those deep sleep stages, either stage 3 or REM sleep, right? Those are meant for you to feel refreshed and feel recovered. So if you're being woken up in the middle of that, then you're gonna feel worse, right? So the apps that are kind of tracking your autonomic nervous system that are gonna wake you up in those lighter sleeps, because your body's supposed to be kind of waking up and getting ready for the day at those points. So it's all about timing, which is easy, you know? So yeah, if you're getting woken up in deep sleep, you can imagine then that it's not going to be refreshing for you because you didn't finish that cycle, unfortunately. And you need to finish the cycle in order for you to get all the benefits of sleep.
Yeah, that can really get you off to a poor day, waking up in the It's kind of like having a newborn again. So
absolutely, but unfortunately that's what alcohol does, because it fragments those, so it's breaking up to smaller pieces. So you're waking up in those deeper stages of sleep and then falling back asleep. You're never actually finishing the cycle. So that's why hangovers are really more related to poor sleep than they are anything else. Dehydration, obviously, but that feeling like absolute garbage in the morning is because of the sleep deprivation, not because of anything else with the alcohol.
Okay.
So.
Wow, I know we spent a lot of time on sleep.
No, sorry, I could talk about this forever.
Yeah, sleep I think is definitely one of the ones we don't really talk about. We all may kind of go down the Google thread every so often, but hearing it from our own H2F is kind of exciting. Yeah. So, and it all goes back to the timing, like you say, and the balance of all three, the big three, which are still relevant, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Anything else you want to add about sleeping?
I would just say that looking at sleep, right, like we know that it impacts the things that you can't outperform, like, or you can't out exercise, right? Your hormones are something that are just naturally occurring in your body, and no matter how much exercise that you put in during the week, you can't outwork out that stuff. So being intentional, prioritizing sleep is just as important as having a good exercise plan or having a good diet too. Because the food that you put into your body, or the way that you can kind of control what you're consuming, is dependent upon your hormone levels, and that is dependent upon how well you're sleeping. So,
wow, the great big balance. And so I'm assuming that your sleep is either like exhausting for your body to process trash in your diet, or something optimal in that it's benefiting from. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.